just want to say right from the outset tonight, I said this morning, but I do feel the weight of this message today, and particularly this topic. Even more so tonight while my son lies in a hospital. The importance of miracles, the importance of breakthrough. Hands up here if you need a miracle tonight, or you know someone who needs a miracle. It's most of you. I believe miracles are our right as believers. It's our right. If what Nick said is true, Jesus paid the price, and he died and he rose again, and by his stripes we're healed. It's our right to see miracles. And I just want to say from the outset, I love what Sarah shared earlier. If you've been praying for a miracle for a long time and you've yet to see it, just hold on. Just hold on. It's on its way. It's on its way. He's faithful. He's just. He may not answer it in the way that you think, because sometimes I do think we approach God like the Wizard of Oz. Here's what you need to do. Here's how you need to do it. Here's when you do it by. And he's like, that's okay. I've got other things I'm working on. I'm kind of trying to heal your spirit and your soul as well as your body. You get to take one with you. But I'm not actually here tonight to convince you of miracles. I'm not here to convince you that they're real. I just know what I know. I know what I've experienced. I know what I've seen. And nothing anyone in this room can say to me will change that fact. Do you know, I experienced a healing once in church, and I got off stage after telling the church about it, and a man came up to me in the foyer and poked me in the chest and said, lies. Lies. It's not true. I was like, well, it is true. He's like, I don't believe it. I said, you don't have to. It's okay. I'm not offended by what you said. And it turns out his mother had just passed away from cancer. And you never know what someone's statement to you is coming from pain. So if you're in the middle of that process tonight, there's grace for you. And I know it all too well. But in my life, even in recent times, like a friend of mine, I'm going to tell you a few things that I have seen. A really, really good friend of mine has had a severely disabled child since birth. He's currently 16 years old. He was told he wouldn't live beyond 4 or 5. He has a breathing tube and a breathing tube in his chest. He had a collapsed larynx. Within the last 18 months, that young boy has been healed. So, and I have prayed for this child every single night for at least 12 years. 12 years, every night. Pray for Elijah. Pray for Elijah. Just pray from God, heal him. And through some miraculous, supernatural circumstances, he had a swim in the hot pool. I spoke to his dad, who had just taken him to the hot pools for his 16th birthday. His first time in a hot bath ever. And he said he squealed and giggled and just about drowned. Because he was quite big and he's quite hard to handle. I've seen a small, withered, child-sized hand that was paralyzed, deformed since birth, grow to full size and function like a normal hand right in front of my eyes. I've seen broken bones healed. I've seen people with hearing damage repaired. I've seen damaged kneecaps restored. A couple of years ago, end of 2023, 2023? Yeah, 2024 potentially, I don't know. It was just after Nick and Sarah got here. We went to a conference in Australia, and there was a woman there. There's actually a pile of miracles that happened in the gathering we were in, like about 150 people got healed. I just think Jesus thinks it's a game. But there was a woman there who had a crooked arm. Her right arm had been broken since she was 5 or 6 years old, fell off the monkey bars at school. She was 58 years old, and she'd learned her whole life to write left-handed, even though she was right-handed. Couldn't do it. Her arm was really, really sore. Well, they prayed for her, and her arm straightened in the middle of the gathering. There was a woman at the same meeting, and she was standing there, and she said, "My son is deaf. No, my son is autistic, and she was deaf. And while they prayed for her son, her ears went pop, and she's like, "What? I can hear people." I've seen hips that are out of joint come right. It's actually funny because there was not that funny, but there's a young man whose mother had an accident and her hip was out of place at the same meeting, and she was in hospital, and he just held up his phone and said, "Just get it through the phone." And he said she was like, my hips have just popped back in. Yeah. I've seen back pain healed. We had a meeting, I was leading worship at one time, and 70 people got healed of chronic back pain at the same time, in the same meeting. Another meeting I was leading worship at, we had, there's about 3,000 women in the room, about 800 of them stood up having addiction issues in their life. And at the same single moment as the speaker prayed, every single one of those women fell forward like that, and they were all delivered in the same moment. How Jesus got around them that quick, I have no idea. I've seen countless deep emotional wounds healed. People delivered of demons. If you've ever had a demon in you, it feels like a miracle to have it out. Amazing. When I was a young man, I was 10 or 12 years old. I can't remember how old I was, but there was a man in our church at the Baptist church just over there, he'd been paralyzed and he'd been in a wheelchair, certainly all of my life. Had an accident or something and was paralyzed from the waist down. We prayed for him. I was standing behind him at the time and laid my hand on his back, and there was this almighty crack, bone-jarring crack, and he yelled, moved his legs and jumped out of the wheelchair and ran out the building. And if you've ever seen a miracle like that, you don't go, "Yay, wow, that's so cool. Oh, that's so awesome." It's terrifying. It is terrifying. The fear of God hits you in the most profound way. Personally myself, I thought I'd cracked his back because I had my hand like bang. I was like, honestly, man, I was not pushing that hard. These are quite big, but they are not that strong. But yeah, he ran out and he ran around the building for 45 minutes. True story. And that was a crazy night. It was a long night, actually. Peace that doesn't make sense. I've experienced this myself personally when Noah was having open heart surgery when he was 4 years old. We were in the waiting room waiting for him, and Ellie and I just had nothing. We're two pastors who are just like a bag of cats. We're just we lost all our peace, lost all our joy, and I was like, well, I don't know what to do. I said, we just have to pray. We held hands and we just cried and we prayed, and this lovely woman from Starship came and put her hands on our shoulders and prayed, and this ridiculous peace filled us. Ridiculous. I would describe it as a wet duvet. It was heavy. It just came on us like a heavy. And I was like, man, I feel awesome. So we went to the gym, we went to a cafe, and we just got on with our lives because we had peace. I would show you the picture if it wasn't, it would be too much. But I've got a picture of us in intensive care in hospital. Noah's just had a 3.5, 4 hour operation. He has 24 drips and drains out his neck, and he's got a massive wound in his chest. And we're in intensive care and we're just laughing over him, full of joy, full of peace, full of this indescribable sense of, thank you, God. And nothing anyone will ever say to me will take that away. Plus, I have the photo, and it looks bad because Noah looks terrible and Ellie looks like she's laughing at him. But that's the miracle of peace. If you need peace tonight, if stuff is going on in your mind, if there are things that are taking up the real estate of your mind, peace is available. And it'll be quite tangible. We're going to pray for peace later on. Miracles, if you look at them, often have two ingredients somewhere in the mix: desperation and dependence. And when you're desperate, you can end up in some pretty unusual places. But when you don't care what people think, isn't that what the Lord is really looking for? So I have a naturally husky voice. I've kind of had it a long time. I thought I got it when I sung in a covers band and did too many Nirvana songs, but I've actually naturally had a husky voice all my life. So back in 2011, our church recorded an album, and I decided I want to get some vocal lessons. But the singing teacher told me she couldn't help me. She said, no way, you got something going on in there, man. You got reflux and nodules, and I can't help you. You're stuffed. I'm like, thank you. I'll pay you. I'll pay you good money. She said, nope, I don't want your money. I can't help you. Go and see a surgeon. So I went and saw Eno's throat surgeon. My first appointment, I got the junior, the trainee, and she put the camera up my nose and down my throat. It is as bad as it sounds, actually. You gag a bit. And she said, hey, can you just whistle for me? So I whistled. Can you just say something? I was like, Mary had a little lamb. And she's like, oh. And then she hands me the scope thing that she's on. She says, just hold this for a second. I said to get the doctor. I'm like, I thought you were the doctor. So here I am holding this thing myself. And then the throat surgeon comes in. He goes, oh, I'll take that off you. And he looked at her like, what are you doing? Let him have that thing down his throat. And he says, we need to see you in clinic. I'm like, I thought I am in clinic. We need to see you in proper clinic. Is that a thing? Real clinic with real doctors. So it took me 6 months to get that appointment. It took me 2 weeks to get my next appointment. And it turns out I was diagnosed as having a paralyzed left side of my throat. My vocal cord on the left side is the same size as Nemo's little fin, and my other one is the size of the other fin. So you can imagine this. They also don't touch. They are like a chicane. There's about a 1 centimeter gap between the two of them. And my arytenoids, which are the trap doors that let the sound out and don't let the food in, my left one was deformed and paralyzed, and the right one sort of wiggles like this. Diagnosed as having laryngeal dysphonia or something like that. A bit broken. If you know anything about the way voices work and the way singing works, the way your two chords vibrate together, they look like this, and they vibrate together slowly. That's a low note. And if they vibrate together fast, that's a high note. And one waving in the wind just goes, and that's the one I have. So I get diagnosed as being physically disabled, and that I can't hold sound long enough. I still can't. I have about 30 of these appointments on my throat to try and figure out what is going on. What can you do? I have 4 vocal surgeries in that time. The first one, they kind of give me Botox. I know you looked at me and thought, that guy's had Botox. I have actually had it in my throat. to bring my left cord across to give me a bit more airflow management. It worked, but it lasted about 3 months and it wore off. So I had the same operation again. It worked, but it lasted about 3 months. So they decided on the third surgery that they were going to put something a little bit more permanent in, like silicone or rubber. And they botch it, they get it wrong, and they put a big lump in, and my whole voice seizes. My friends started calling me Chewbacca because I sounded like a Wookiee, and my singing voice was completely gone. Little side note here, if you've received a miracle and you try and make it better for the Lord, I don't know if that is a good, helpful thing. It certainly didn't make it better. I completely stuffed it. So I've gone from leading worship 5 times a week at the church I was at in Auckland to no longer able to sing and barely able to crackle some sort of tiny bit of voice out. I get prayed for, feels daily. I have so much oil on my forehead from being anointed that I could boil an egg on there and it would slip straight off. I had every church that we knew around the world praying for me and nothing. Crickets. I actually had this encounter with the Lord in this time. They were anointing me and praying for me and crying over me. There's about 10 people in the room. And I was just sitting there going, man, this sucks. And I have this vision. I didn't share this morning, but I just remembered it. I have this vision of me as Nemo, the irony. And I'm swimming up to Bruce the shark, who's God. And I sort of swim up and I'm like, hey, can you heal me? And Bruce says, hello, Nemo. Hello, God. Can you heal me? Yeah, I can heal you. Why do you want that? I was like, well, I'm struggling to swim. I just want to swim like the other fish. He said, how did you get here? Well, it was a struggle, but I got here. He said, sure, I can heal you once and it'll be a miracle, but you'll probably forget it. Or every time you open your mouth, it can be a miracle. What would you prefer? And I was like, oh, that's tough. Am I less spiritual for wanting to be healed? So, yeah, I'll be honest, like I crack jokes about it, but they were incredibly dark times for my soul. I remember shaking my fist at God outside the hospital, just saying, you suck. You've called me to do this. You gave me half the tools for the job. I hate it. Get me out of this. Fast forward, 2012, it's been 7 months now. I've just pretty much given up. And a lovely old lady named Joan Edmondson says to me, hey, I'd like to pray for you at my little prayer group. She's 74 years old, and that was in 2012. And she's still alive and she's still going. She's an amazing woman. And she had a prayer group of 8 people. They all had different spiritual gifts. And they just prayed for me. And long story short, over 2 very long sessions, at the end of the last session, they said, hey, we're going to anoint your voice and just hope that God has some spare parts in heaven that he's going to replace that. And now I was 1 week away from having throat surgery again. They were going to cut my throat, scrape my cord out, doing irreparable damage to my voice, and it would have been all over Red Rover. So I was pretty desperate. And they anointed my voice, and honestly, the prayer had been going so long, I started falling asleep. And this is 7.5 months. And at that point, I swallowed a stone, and I swallowed it down, and my voice instantly went clear and came back in an instant. A 7.5 month instant. And I read this note out. My wife makes notes on my messages all the time. I don't know if you can say that. She said, note that some people who know anatomy may wonder how something in your windpipe got swallowed down your food pipe. I have never, ever thought about that until today. That's another miracle, I guess. It was in my windpipe and I swallowed it down my food pipe, so it must have sucked through the wall to the right pipe. Anyway, I live to tell the tale. I went and had my pre-op checkup with the surgeon, and he said to me, it was pretty ugly actually. The ear, nose, throat specialist was in the room next door. The vocal head of the vocal therapy, she did the test and she's crying. Oh my God, it's a miracle, it's a miracle. I don't know what to say. Your voice has come back to the very first test from like 2 years ago. Your voice is back. She goes next door and the surgeon rips her to shreds. You've brought up the wrong test results. He can't sing, he can't talk. It's over, get out. And he comes next door and says, hey, how you going? I said, yeah, I'm doing good, thanks. These walls are paper thin. He says, oh, listen to your voice. I said, yeah. Oh, apparently you think you've been healed. Yeah, I have been healed. He's like, all right, let's go and take a look. So we went next door, put the camera down the throat again, one last time. And I sang Amazing Grace for them, made the room cry. Not the surgeon, though. He just freaked out. And it's such a Western thing to do. And I want to challenge every single one of us. If you're praying for something and it happens, but it doesn't happen the way you think it should happen, don't rationalize it away. Don't think, that's because this. So when I tell the surgeon, there's like 10 people in the room, half of them are crying. The surgeon starts shuffling his paper and says, isn't that just wonderful how the human body fixes these things? Aren't you going to do surgery on me next week? So he said to me, what do you want? I said, sayonara, sucker, I'm out of here. And I haven't been back to see him since. So here's what I've learned, though, in this process. You can do everything in the natural to help and then trust God for the rest. You might only be able to do 5%, and you might need him to do 95%. That's good. He can do that. Trust God to do the rest. But at the same time, don't make faith your last option. Make it your first. I love it that today when my son came out of the water, he realized he'd hit the bottom of the water, dived in the water, hit his head, compressed his vertebrae, came out of the water. He lay on the jetty, and all the youth that were around him just gathered around him and prayed. Make prayer your first option. And when I got there, the first thing I did was grab the youth and we prayed. It makes a difference. It makes a difference. But what can we do in this short bit of time I have left before we pray for some people to see these, let's be honest, rare occurrences be more regular in our day-to-day lives? There's 3 simple things. Create an atmosphere around you. Create an atmosphere in the house of God. Create an atmosphere of faith. There's a challenge in the Western church that we are so comfortable. We're so comfortable in our Western lifestyle. The faith is often the last thing we look to. And you can come to church and you can pray for people day in, day out and not see anything. And then get on a plane and go to Africa and lay hands on the sick and they all get healed. It's like when you get on the plane, the attendant says, we will now be passing around the spiritual gifts of healing. All of you who are heading to Africa will be able to heal everyone when you land. And then when you leave Africa, the announcement says, please leave your gift of healing in the tray table provided in front of you, and you can go back to your Western life. The difference is faith. The difference is an atmosphere of faith. And I would love to see it at Kirek Church, that we have an atmosphere of faith, that if anybody brings a sick person in here, they'll get healed. I've been to Bethel. I went to Bethel in 2014. And at the start of the service, about 600 of us in the room, they said, hands up here, you saw a supernatural miracle this week. Only 2 hands didn't go up of the 600. And that was Ellie and I's. Actually, I ended up putting my hand up. I was like, I'm just going to put it up because, well, look at you. What's wrong with you? What's wrong with you, woman? We realized that we'd been in church for a long time and that we were asleep. We were living some black and white, half-cooked Christianity. And there are other people who live in Technicolor. And we tasted it and we never wanted to go back. Faith matters. What you believe and how you see things matters. Jesus wants to heal you. He wants to heal your mind. He wants to heal your body. He wants you moving freely. I know right now I have no fear for Noah. No fear. I know Jesus wants to heal him. And so do I. So he's going to be fine. No fear. No, I said to Noah, do you feel anxious? Are you worried? No. I said, you okay? Yep. Okay. That's pretty common for Noah. Are you aware of what's happened? Yep. Random story. I do need to finish quickly. I've been thinking a lot about motorcycles a lot in the last while, how they go around corners. I'm not allowed to ride a motorcycle. Ellie will not let me. She doesn't believe I'm a good enough driver. But there's this thing that riders have called target fixation and the curve. So here's the story. Imagine a motorcyclist approaching a tight, unfamiliar curve. The rider's nervous and looks directly at the guardrail on the outside of the turn, terrified of hitting it. The result? Because a motorcycle goes where the rider looks, they fall into the trap of target fixation, staring directly into the hazard that they feared. The lesson is that expert riders do not look at the immediate danger, in this case the guardrail. They look through to the turn to the exit, allowing the bike to follow their gaze smoothly. They look through it, not at it. They scan ahead. Where you look matters. Who you look to matters. How you look at them matters. Psalm 121 verses 1 to 2 says, I lift my eyes up to the mountains. Where does my help come from? My help comes from the Lord, the maker of heaven and earth. Hebrews 11 verses 6 says, it's impossible to please God without faith. Anyone who wants to come to him must believe that God exists and that he rewards those who sincerely seek him. Hebrews 11:1 says, faith shows the reality of what we hope for. It's the evidence of the things we cannot see. 3 simple takeaways for today. What you behold is what you become. What you behold is how you behave. And what you behold is what you believe. If faith truly is the substance of what you hope for and the evidence of things not seen. I love to give this analogy that if you got arrested right now and you got thrown in jail and the charge was you're a Christian that believed in miracles, would there be enough evidence in your life to convict you of that? The evidence of things unseen. You know, this March we're believing to see a massive shift in the atmosphere here at Curate Church. Not just singing a song, this is a house of miracles, but this actually being a house of miracles. But before we pray for every single person who needs a miracle or knows someone who needs a miracle, and there was a lot of you, man. There's 2 things I want to let you know. Comfort is a faith killer. Staying comfortable. And pride is a faith blocker. If you truly want to step into that realm of the miraculous, see God working in your life in those ways, it is going to cost you something. I don't believe it's possible to stay in your seat and play it safe and experience a radical breakthrough. Because God's looking for faith. Had the option of going to the hospital tonight, getting Nick or Sarah to preach. But this is too important. This is too important. I know God's got my son. I know it. But there are people in this room right now, and you need a breakthrough. You do. You've been waiting too long. And whether God does it tonight, whether God starts it tonight, or whether God just gives you the faith to keep going, it's a miracle. So why don't you stand to your feet? I'm going to get the rest of the team to come up and join Curtis. So tonight, we're going to open up this altar. Prayer team are going to come and pray. I got faith for physical miracles tonight. I got faith for the miracle of provision for businesses and for families. I got faith for mental and emotional miracles. I got faith for peace that passes every single bit of understanding you have right now amidst the storm. I got faith for prodigal sons, daughters, mothers, fathers to come back. If that's you, if you're any one of those things, or you're just like, man, I just need a miracle, I want to encourage you just to come out of your seat right now and just come and stand down the front.